If you've ever driven up to Genting Highlands, you would probably have seen it. There is this big, reddish-brown apartment building sitting on the hill, not far from the main resort area. It looks kinda strange. It's tall, old, and really doesn't match the shiny new hotels and theme parks nearby. That place is called Amber Court. For those of you who don't know, Genting Highlands is a resort town in Malaysia. It's about an hour drive from Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital city, right up into the mountains. Most people go there for the cooler weather, the casino, or to just, get away from the city, because it's a very popular weekend spot. But once you go up there, the fog gets thick. The roads feels a bit too quiet sometimes, and some of the buildings, they have stories, especially Amber Court. You see, local calls it the ghost court. And yeah, I know, people love calling any old building haunted, and maybe the lights are dim, or maybe the walls are dirty and boom, ghost story. But this place, it's different. There are so many real stories. People who have stayed there says they have seen things, heard things, and some of them even said they brought something back home with them after they leave Genting Highland as well. This is where Amira comes in. She's a student from Kuala Lumpur, a final year journalism major. For her thesis, she wanted to study haunting buildings in Malaysia and how old, abandoned places might be linked to local ghost stories and beliefs. So, she decided to stay at Amber Court just for 3 nights. Her plan was simple. She wanted to interview a few staff, talk to some people who live nearby, record some sounds, take some notes, nothing really scary. But during those 3 nights, Amira noticed that she didn't just collect stories. She also saw things, she recorded things, and by the end of the trip, something also came back with her. In the story, she spoke to 4 different people. Each one had a different story. Some are from Amber Court, and some are from the Ria Apartment, which is another older building not far away from there. It's more of like a residential place tucked inside the hillside, but just as strange as Amber Court. These 4 stories that she collected, each one weirder than the last. And by the end of it all, Amira also had one of her own as well. The first story that Amira collected is called The Jumpers. Amira arrived at Amber Court on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The lobby was largely deserted with only a few people lingering around. The space didn't really resemble the haunted, but there was something unsettling about it nonetheless. The faded reddish-brown walls seemed to absorb the light, making the lobby feel heavier than it should have. Amira's first destination was the security office. She had arranged to meet with one of the longtime guards via email. His name was Mr. Zarak. So he was a man in his 60s with a lean frame and a soft, worn-out voice. He carried the expression of someone who had worked too many night shifts and have seen more than he liked to talk about. He had served at Amber Court for over 2 decades. When Amira asked him whether he had seen anything unusual in the building, Mr. Zarak didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up and motioned silently for her to follow him. And without a word, he led her through a narrow hallway into a small, dimly lit room that was filled with old CCTV's monitors. The feeds flickered in black and white, and sometimes occasionally was disrupted by static. There was no audio, just grainy, shifting images on aging screens. He eventually spoke. He told Amira that after the financial crash in the late 1990s, they had a surge of people coming up here. He said, some of them were gamblers. Others, they're just desperate. They had lost everything. Their jobs, their savings, and even their families. They would go to the casino hoping that they can win back their lives, but most really didn't. And when the weight of all of that failure caught up with them, some chose to end it right here in Amber Court. He pointed at one of the monitors. That's the one that linked to the rooftop camera, camera number 6. Sometimes late at night, he said, we will see someone standing on the edge. But that person didn't really do anything. He's just there, standing completely still. Then the feed would cut off and static fills the screen. And when the picture comes back, the rooftop is empty, but the door behind them is still swinging. Mr. Zarak pulled up a few archived recordings. One particular clip made Amira lean forward. It showed a shadow figure standing on the narrow ledge near the roof's edge. The resolution was too poor to make out features, but the figure's stance was unmistakable, still, upright, and facing the fog. Suddenly, the screen turned to static, and it lasted for about 2 seconds. When the footage resumed, the figure was gone, but the rooftop door behind where the figure had stood was still ajar, gently swaying. Mr. Zarak turned to Amira. There was a guest, he said. Stayed on the 15th floor. In the middle of the night, she called the reception, and she said there was a man standing outside of her window, just watching, not moving at all. Amira was curious, so she checked the building's floor plan. Amber Court had 16 floors. The window of the room in question faced directly out over a steep drop. There was no ledge. There was no balcony. The guest didn't really stay long, according to Mr. Zarak. She left the very next morning and didn't even ask for her deposit. She just left her key on the desk and walked out. Amira captured everything in her notebook. She also recorded their conversation for her thesis. At the time, she thought the story was just a tragic glimpse into the building's darker history, a sobering moment, something that she might include in her paper. But that was just only the beginning. Things were about to get even stranger. The second story that Amira got was called The Man Who Walked Backwards. That night, Amira went downstairs to buy a bottle of water. The small convenience store near the lobby was still open, but it was a very quiet space, just the buzz from the coolers and an old radio softly playing a song from years ago. The woman behind the counter introduced herself as Mei Ling. She looked to be in her 40s, friendly but very reserved. As Amira paid, she casually asked Mei Ling if anything unusual had ever happened in the building. At first, Mei Ling didn't say anything. Instead, she glanced towards the elevator at the end of the lobby. Her expression shifted slightly, just enough for Amira to notice. Mei Ling finally spoke. About 2 weeks ago, near midnight, I was closing up the store. I looked towards the elevator and there was a man standing there. He looked like a businessman, with neat clothes and black slacks, white shirt and hair combed back. Nothing strange at first glance. She paused and then continued. But he wasn't really doing anything. He wasn't on his phone. He was not reading anything. He was just there, standing there, completely still, not even facing the elevator doors. He was directly staring straight at the wall. Amira listened, unsure of what to make of it. Mei Ling nodded slowly, remembering. When the elevator arrived, the doors opened. He didn't really turn around to walk in. Instead, he stepped backward, still facing the hallway. He slowly moved into the elevator without ever turning his body. It was like he didn't really want to lose sight of something. Amira asked if he might have been drunk. Mei Ling shook her head. No, he was too steady. He was too focused. It was like he was doing it on purpose. Then the elevator doors closed, and I felt this pressure in my chest. It's just uneasy. She went on to say that the next day, when she checked the security footage with Mr. Zarak, the elevator stayed on the ground floor for nearly 2 hours. No one called it. It didn't move. And when it finally opened again, Mei Ling said, it was empty. I checked the footage. He never came out of the elevator. She tapped the counters lightly with her nail. He went in, but he didn't leave. Amira, after hearing that story, glanced over her shoulder at the elevator. It looked perfectly normal, but after hearing that, she avoided taking it alone for the rest of her stay. If she needed to go up or down, she would neither wait for someone else to be around, or she took the stairs. The third story is about the missed woman. Amira got to the third story in the next morning. When she headed down to Ria Apartment, it was just a short drive from Amber Court, a little downhill and a bit more hidden by the surrounding forest. Ria is not a hotel, it's a residential apartment complex, but not the fancy kind you see in the city. It's old. The paint's faded, and some windows are taped up. And most of the people living there are either staff working in Genting or folks who have been there for years, long after the place stopped being a tourist spot. Compared to Amber Court, Ria felt quieter and also somehow heavier, like the building had settled into the mountain and was slowly being forgotten. Amira arranged a meeting with a man named Hafiz, a night technician who worked at Ria Apartment for almost 10 years. He mostly handled maintenance issues, lights, water pumps, the occasional busted lift. But in his time there, he had also seen and heard things that didn't really fit into his job description. They met near the side of the building where the staff usually take breaks. It was a small smoking area next to the jungle. The trees loomed large behind a thin wire fence, and morning mist still clung low to the ground. Hafiz offered her a canned drink from the staff fridge and lit a cigarette. He didn't really wait for Amira to ask. He just started speaking right away, like he had been waiting to share this story. "Have you ever noticed how thick the fog gets up here?" he asked. Amira nodded. The night before, she looked out of her window and could barely see past the next building. Hafiz exhaled slowly and pointed towards the jungle. "That fog is not just the weather, at least not always. Some nights, it comes in heavier than it should, and when it does, you will start to notice movement." Amira tilted her head slightly, prompting him to continue. "There was this one night, maybe a year ago. I was outside smoking like I always do, around 3 in the morning. The air was cold and it was quiet, but then the fog started to roll in. It gets thicker than usual. I could barely see the fence from where I was sitting." He paused to tap ash from his cigarette. "I started to hear something. Soft footsteps on the concrete. Not fast, just steady, like someone was walking barefoot." Amira asked if he thought it might have been one of the residents. "No," he said quickly. "I looked around. No one had passed me, and I know the sound of slippers or shoes. This one was different," he said. He stood up and walked closer to the fog, and that's when he saw her. A woman who just stands there, right in the mist, with long hair, white dress, no shoes. She was facing me, just standing there, staring into the trees. Amira asked if he called out to her. "I did," he said. "I asked if she needed help. I thought maybe she was lost or one of the attendants had wandered out. But the woman didn't react. She didn't move or even turn around." "I took a step closer," Hafez said. "She disappeared. Not ran, not turned. Just gone. Right in front of my eyes," he said. He walked to where she had been standing and found only two things: a faint trail of damp footprints leading away from the building, and one strand of long black hair caught on the fence. He told Amira that a few nights later, another staff member said he saw the same woman. This time, she was standing near the back entrance of the apartment block, staring right up the window. "They said spirits move more freely when the fog gets thick," Hafez said. "It's like the mist. It hides them. It gives them cover." He looked at Amira then, more serious than before. "If you have ever heard soft footprints outside of your window at night. He warned, don't open your curtain. Just turn away and go back to sleep. Amira noted it all down. She even recorded Hafez's voice, thinking it might be useful for her thesis. But something about his tone made her feel uneasy. It was not just a story to him. He had seen something and it had stayed with him. Amira thanked him, packed up her notebooks, and then she started to walk back to her car. The mist at that time had not cleared. If anything, it felt like it was getting thicker. And that's the end of the third story. The last story is called The Watcher. That afternoon, after her talk with Hafez, Amira walked back into Ria Narrow's hallway. The sun was still out, but the building already felt dim inside. She was hoping to speak with one of the part-time cleaners, someone who had worked during the day, often alone. Her name was Ella. She found her in the laundry room, folding sheets in a quiet corner. The room smelled like damp towels and detergent, and there was this slow, constant drip from a nearby sink. Ella seemed hesitant at first, but eventually she opened up to Amira. You want to know what really creeps me out? It's not the loud stuff, not the screams or the slamming doors. It's the quiet moments, the stillness, when something is there, but it doesn't really want you to panic. It wants you to notice, Ella said. Amira asked if something like that had happened to her before, and Ella nodded slowly and looked down at the bedsheet she was folding. There was this one afternoon when I was finished cleaning early. I had a bit of a headache and decided to lie down on one of the empty units. I didn't really fall asleep properly. I just closed my eyes for a bit, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Then her voice dropped. I woke up and then I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I know people call that sleep paralysis, and I thought that too. But then I realized something was off. It was not just the heaviness. I felt like I was watched. She paused, and then she said it clearly. There was a face right above mine, inches away, like it was hanging from the ceiling, and the face just stared at me. Its eyes were wide open and completely still. It didn't really blink and didn't breathe. It was just there, watching me. Amira asked, were you sure that you're not dreaming? Ella responded that, that's what I kept telling myself. I couldn't look away. I tried to close my eyes, but it was like something was forcing me to keep them open. And then it smiled. Not just a little, not threatening. It looks like it was pleased, like it was happy that I saw it. She rubbed her arms like she could still feel it. I finally broke free. I jerked my head to the side and it was gone. I ran straight out, left everything. I didn't even lock the door. And after that, I never go into one of the emptier units unless the sun is fully out. Amira thanked Ella and walked out of the laundry room after she finished talking about the story. She was feeling a little colder than before. That last story stayed in her head for the rest of the day. Not because it was loud or violent, but because of how quiet it was, how personal, because the idea of something hovering just above you, watching, waiting while you were sleeping, just really creeps her out. That night, Amira makes sure her curtains are drawn tightly. She double-checked the locks on her door, and she left a light on while she slept. By the third and final night at Amber Court, Amira was exhausted, not physically but mentally. The stories that she had gathered were already far more intense than she had expected. She told herself that she was just here to collect interviews, maybe gather a few ambient footage for her thesis. But something about the place had started to wear on her. That night, she kept the lights on in the room, just a warm bedside lamp, but it helped her to sleep. She had packed most of her gear and spent a few hours reviewing her recordings. Around 1:30 in the morning, she got into bed and scrolled through her notes one last time before trying to sleep. And then she heard it. 3 slow knocks. not on the door, but on the wall. It came from the wall behind her headboard, the wall that connected her room to the empty apartment unit next door. At first, Amira froze. She stared at the ceiling, wondering if maybe it was just the pipes or the building settling. But then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder, but slower. Not random. Not like the creaks or the bumps of an old building. It sounded deliberate, like someone was trying to get her attention. She got up quietly and walked over to the wall. She leaned in, not touching it, but just listening. The moment she got close, the knocking stopped. For a second, she just stood there, heart racing. And then it started again. But this time, it was on the other side of the room. On the closet door. Not loud, just 3 soft knocks. Amira turned around slowly, staring at the closet. She had not used it. It was empty when she checked in, and she hadn't touched it since. Trying to stay calm, she walked over and opened the door. Nothing, just air. She closed it and backed away, still facing the closet, and sat down on the bed. For a while, there was silence. And then, just as she reached for her phone to record something, she heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it came from the door to the hallway. She didn't open it. She didn't even get up. She just sat there until morning, with the lamp still on, clenching her recorder and not saying a word. Amira checked out early the next morning. She didn't even wait for the front desk to open. She just dropped her key in the after-hours box and wheeled out her suitcase out and left. The drive down from Genting Highlands was quiet. It was still early, just after sunrise, and the roads were empty, except for the occasional food truck setting up by the roadside. Amira didn't really turn on the music. She didn't even stop for coffee. She just wanted to get home. Back in Kuala Lumpur, she arrived at her apartment just before 9 a.m. It was a small unit near her university, on the 17th floor. She liked it a lot because it was quiet, and it had good lightings in the morning, and most importantly, it always felt safe. That afternoon, she spent a few hours unpacking. She packed up all of her audio files, scribbled a few follow-up notes, and took a long shower, trying to wash off the heaviness of the last 3 days. By the time the sun set, she was already back in her pajamas, curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone like normal. Everything felt fine again. That night, Amira went back to bed around midnight. Her room was dimly lit by the street light outside, filtering through a thin beige curtain. As she lays down on her bed, she left her window slightly open to let in some fresh air. It was around 3 a.m. in the morning when she suddenly woke up. No sound, no dream, just that strange, alert feeling, like her body had decided to wake her up before her brain caught up. She laid there for a moment, blinking into the low light, and that's when she noticed it. The curtain. It was moving slightly, not flapping, just shifting, like someone was standing behind it, not moving but breathing. At first, Amira told herself that it was just the wind. Maybe the window was open wider than she thought. And then she realized there was no wind in the room. The air was still, too still. She sat up slowly and stared at the curtain. From her bed, she could just make out the shape of the window frame and something else. A shadow, slightly off-center, tall and motionless. It was not the shape of the window, and it wasn't hers. Her heart started pounding. She didn't get up. She didn't even move. She just watched. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she realized something terrifying. The shadow was not on the curtain. It was behind it. Amira slowly reached for her phone. She didn't know what she was gonna do. But before she could even unlock the screen, the shadow moved, not away. It leaned forward. Then, slowly, a hand pressed against the inside of the curtain from behind. 5 fingers, pale, thin. And that's when Amira snapped. She leaped out of bed and turned on every single light in the room and yanked the curtain open. Nothing. The window was closed, locked from the inside, and no one was there. No footprints, no smudge, not even a fingerprint on the glass. But the curtain was still warm where the hand had been. Amira didn't sleep for the rest of that night, and from that moment on, she started to keep her curtain shut. Every single night, no matter what. A few days passed. Amira tried to get back to her routine. Classes, thesis writing, occasional light snacks from the mamak downstairs. From the outside, everything looked normal again. But she didn't really felt the same since Genting. It was not just the stories. It was not even the things she had seen. It was something else. A feeling. Like she did not come back alone. At first, it was just small things. Lights flickering for no reason, her laptop turning on in the middle of the night, the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway outside of her door. Even when her neighbors were out, she told herself it was just her mind playing tricks after everything that she had experienced. But then, one night, something happened that she couldn't explain. It was around 2 a.m. and Amira just finished editing some audio and was getting ready to sleep. She stood in front of the mirror in her bathroom, brushing her hair, when she saw it. In the reflection right behind her, just for a split second, was a woman. Pale skin, long black hair, no eyes, just dark, empty sockets. Amira turned around so fast, she dropped her brush. But there was no one there. The bathroom was silent and empty. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in her living room with all the lights on, clenching her recorder like it was some kind of protection. From that night on, the presence became more obvious. She started to hear knocking, not like before, not random or soft. This time it was rhythmic, patterned, always at 3:17 a.m. in the morning, every single night. Once, she looked through the peephole in her front door during the knocking. What she saw made her step back and cover it immediately. It was not a person. It was something standing far enough that she couldn't see the details, but close enough to know that it was facing the door, waiting for her to open. The knocking stopped after a minute, but the feeling didn't. Amira stopped going out at night. She kept salt at every window. She never opened her curtains, and she even thought about moving to another different place. But something told her it would not matter. Because whatever followed her back from Genting, it had already made itself at home with her. And that is the end of the story, Ghost Tales from Genting Highlands. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next story. Bye bye.